Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is December 7, 2024. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with David Moss. Where in the heck you calling in from, David?
I'm calling in from Berlin, Germany.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Play.
Oh my God, that's my favorite word. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
From someone's mouth.
I like that. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think humans have a somewhat forgotten desire to be surprised, and real information, I think carries a kind of a carrier wave. It's on a carrier wave of surprise. Things we know are part of our experience, and we use them. We don't think of them so much as information anymore. They're part of our daily working being life. But when we have a surprise, this suddenly alerts us to the fact that a new bit of data, a new bit of unknown stuff has come into our life, which is what I think of as information.
Yeah, but that's amazing. Why did humans forget to be surprised?
This is a really pretty heavy question, and it goes back about 6 billion years. But humans were fighting the battle of survival. Surprise you can biologically programmed to be an alert for danger, more or less. From the animal state of being, as far as I know it. So surprise, I think, in the back of our back lizard brain is connected with danger, not with pleasure. Even though now in our advanced culture that's what we supposedly have, we've invented time and we've invented space and we think we can manipulate it in some strange way, like Frank Zappa would say. Even in our advanced culture, we haven't gotten rid of that sense of danger being that danger is dangerous. Danger doesn't teach. Danger is dangerous. This is funny for me. I'm playing with these words because the words carry, their words are magic. Words came from actions and objects and being. They didn't just come to us from outer space. With the word danger didn't come down, a danger, or surprise didn't come down. They came from incidents and actualities that happened to us. And so words have power. Although the power has kind of been covered up in the billions and trillions of words that we deal with every day. So I think humans could, me as one of them, I've been searching in my own way to get back to this power and to transmute it between people in the act of playfulness.
Yes. Wow. You go full circle, dude. That was amazing because you evoked a lot. I'm into etymology. I like to look up where a word came from. My favorite is when it goes of unknown origin. It's like every word is of unknown origin. Somebody just sat in an office and said, well, it came from here, we think, or we got some patterns, and it's made up. It's like magic. And I like that because McLuhan has a great line, to the blind, all things are sudden. So like when my wife walks in late at night, I'll go, boo, and she'll go, ah. Now, is that she's reacting like it's danger, but at the same time, she knows it's me. And then she realizes a half a split second later, oh, I'm just having fun and being playful. But that's funny. The words surprise and danger, how they're connected.
Yeah, I think the humans have a lot to unlearn. I mean, me included. But unlearning is really one of the most difficult things, unless you take a large amount of certain specific drugs. Unlearning is really difficult. We are learning animals. We understand how to put things in categories. It's one of our basic ways of being, categorizing information. Where does it belong? What does it mean to me? How can I use it? And what will happen next? Those kinds of things,
This is deep, David. I really appreciate this. You get it. So, do you think this need or want to collect or gather information is more innate or more invented?
Yeah, well, I wasn't around at the beginning of things, um, but if one can imagine that information is a collection of minute disturbances to the space-time continuum, which jump on each other's back and create a shape. If one can imagine that that is information, then one could say that a star is an information creator by sending out protons and electrons, which interact with other things outside of the star. So in that sense, our the classic physicists, when they're trying to entertain the people, says our bodies are made of things that come from stars. We are part of the universe. Well, yeah, we are information gatherers from our very protons, from our electrons. We are data. We suck it up. We spit it out. And I think in that sense, it's innate in
Yeah.
us. The interaction of it is innate, and I think the interaction of it can be called, this is why I said the word play, can be called primally playful, because it's not about winning or losing or gaining or taking over. It's about exchange of energies,
Wow.
basically.
Yeah, you're touching on so much where we're going. I appreciate this. Do thoughts create Wait a minute. No, do thoughts create emotions?
I think it's a it's a big circle of creation. I don't want to sound too mystical here, but thoughts, emotion, going around in this
Yeah.
snake eating its tail kind of thing.
Tail.
Like,
Yeah.
it depends where you're at on the cycle and who stops you and makes you think about it at that moment. Then you say, "Oh, you made me feel that way," or "No, you didn't make me feel that way. I was going in that direction, and you crystallized it." I mean, it's one of those imponderables. You just have to sort of like accept where you are at the moment.
Yeah. It's really good. Be here now. And that is that's interesting, because some of these early questions are, is it more this or more that? And this one woman, that the word more doesn't function in your question, because people think I'm asking, is it this or that? And really, I'm just saying it's a prompt and you can go wherever you want. I welcome
Right.
anecdotes, stories, or whatever. So fill in the blank, David. I don't know what I think until I,
Feel something in my body.
yeah.
You see, I started as a drummer, Gerry. My
Yeah.
father was a drummer. My father was a Dixieland jazz drummer for fun. And the one time in my early life that I felt uh, his body experiencing pleasure in front of me was when he was playing the drums. And
Wow.
I saw this happen. And this affected me my whole life. And I then started to play the drums. And for me, the physical act of touching that stuff, those objects, cymbals, and drums and stuff, uh, was completely related to my ability to express nonverbal things, which were whatever was inside me that you could call emotions, feelings, whatever. And therefore, the act of performing became for me a physically related event. Singing, performing, working with people in front of you as an actor, singer, player, whatever, was not simply doing your part, but it was physically putting something out there, vibrations, vocalizations, hammering on something that would then carry it into the body of another person.
Yeah. I want to divert for 1 second, because we're going to get into family, but do
Okay.
you think it's a little more your dad's DNA or a little more his raising you, watching him drum, that empowered you to be a drummer? Just, is it 50-50, or is it a little more one or the other?
I think it's pretty gemished, as we say in the old homestead. It's pretty mixed up. Uh, I think that watching my father do it gave me pleasure, and nothing else had to be talked about because there wasn't much emotional talking going on in the early family life. It was mostly, my father didn't want me to be a drummer. He wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or a professor, that kind of thing. So the fact that this gave me pleasure was a mixed pleasure for him. He was happy that I liked what he liked. But then again, we'll be careful. It's dangerous, Dave. Oh, it's a surprise. It's a big thing. It's
danger.
Danger and play. It was mixed. It was a mixed thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know what I think until I say it, is what McLuhan said. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. But I like that you said feel in the body, because feeling is yeah, that was good. Okay. Can humans think without language?
I don't know, really. Language is an has been I'm not a scientist. I'm not a linguist. I'm only a drummer, But that's what they tell me all the time. But I'm not a drummer anymore. But okay. But language has been evolving for a huge amount of time. And there was a moment when I was teaching a voice workshop where I asked my students. I gave them an exercise. I said, I would like you to imagine you're an alien who has landed, an alien being who has landed on Earth and is sitting in the middle of a muddy field somewhere, waiting for someone to discover you, and you don't have anything that Earthlings know as language. You have something else to express your awareness of the universe, and your job as an alien is what you have to do is convince the average Joe coming home from work that you have intelligence, but they don't know anything you are doing that. How do you show intelligence in a form that someone else will recognize that isn't language as we know it? This was like a giant discovery workshop. But what the hell does that mean to discover intelligence without language? How do I express what am I talking about? Time? Am I talking about rhythm? Am I talking about dividing time in rhythmic ways that language does without necessarily conveying? Am I talking about vocalization or just patterning things? What gives repetition? What gives the stuff meaning? The alien should be smart enough to tell us what that is, and we can say, "Oh man, you intelligent! I'm taking you home to show my parents." So I don't know the answer to your question.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, because I don't know. I can't answer that. People feel like they're obliged. No, you could say, I can't answer that. That's beautiful. But your answer was the best answer I got in 40 years, because I use this as an example. I'm serious, because I love when they asked Andy Warhol, what does this painting mean? He goes, can I just go, blah, 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 blah? And the interviewer goes, yes. So he goes, blah, 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 blah. And that's Finneganese. I mean, that's James Joyce invented that language.
Yeah. I bet, this whole thing about the search for meaning has been so hellishly crushing us to death in some way. This search for meaning. Yeah, there is meaning in everything. I mean, you only have to take it for yourself. Like I remember, the first drum solo I played in public on a tour in Wales, in Great Britain, when I was 17, and I played a drum solo in a nightclub. I was playing with a boys singing group, a college singing group, and I played a drum solo, and there were a bunch of 250 fairly drunken patrons in the room who wanted to hear 4-part harmony. And then I had a 1-minute drum solo, and I was in the beginning of my career, as you've heard it, in terms of like, I wasn't wacky at all. I was a regular drummer. And so I went regular kind of drum solo. And in the middle of my 45 seconds, I heard a voice call out from the back in British accent. Yeah, that's all very well, but what does it mean? I've heard the
Oh
guy say that.
my God, he literally said that?
Yeah, but what does it mean? The fact that this human could take themselves so far out of the moment of experience to ask what these beats meant is something interesting to think about, you know?
It might
Wow.
have been what caused you to do what you did in Very Off. You
In
could be
some way,
Billy you could be
I
doing
remember
Billy
this story.
Cobham now, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I remember. I remember. I felt this. I felt very clearly the fact that when you do what you love to do, when a person does what they love to do,
Yeah,
they don't question the necessity. Necessity in my mind, necessity equals meaning. Necessity carries meaning. If it's
right.
necessary, it's meaningful. But you don't. I don't recognize that my necessity might be difficult to interpret for
Yeah,
another person. They might understand that I love and need to do it and want to do it, but they don't understand that it's necessity. Why does it exist in front of me? They are far away from it. I can understand that. So I would start a lot of my concerts when I was younger by saying to people, hey, everybody, thank you for inviting me. You know, I just came from home where I make some applesauce last night in my oven, and I had to feed my dog before I left. I'm a normal guy like you are, you know. I'm just like I'm not some wacko that you can dismiss by saying, "What does it mean?" I live a life. I live a life like everybody, and I live this stuff too, you know.
Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, it's a tradition, it's a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. David, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Uh, it's an interesting choice at that moment. Sometimes I just get quiet. I just
Yeah,
sometimes somebody only needs to know that you're listening for them to uh, give you another entry into what they're trying to say, so you can respond. Or sometimes I just make a sound, a very
yeah,
encouraging sound, like, but not acting like an artist or anything, not acting like a
right,
performer, just
right, yeah.
something that will just sort of get us over the hump of intellectually figuring it all out and just go to the subject matter in some other direction, you know. Direction change is really important in music composition, in making surprise change transitions happen. Direction change, sudden stops, sudden starts allow a new momentum to be created sometimes.
Boy, that really resonated because this guy interviewed me from the Wall Street Urinal or Journal, and he wouldn't for 45 minutes on the speakerphone. He wouldn't go, uh-huh, oh, uh-huh, mm-hmm. No verbal indication. So it's like, are you still there? Because I
Mhm.
was like, that's why I love Zoom. At least you can see them kind of
Mm.
showing that there's some sort of presence. But
Right.
in his, there was no, I was like, it was a little disheartening. And I didn't know if it was because of age difference or what. So, your this is another one. It's either or, but your observations of humans in general, are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
I think I think we're in the mess that we're in is because we're more feeling beings being shut down by our thinking. I think that's
Oh,
the basic mess of the world is this is a very an armored feeling system. Our feelings are armored by our intellect, not expanded continually. I kind of see. I never verbalized it this way. Thank you for getting me to do it, Gerry. But I can see that our intellect is always spewing out. I mean, our emotions is spewing out rays of information, but it's a little bit dangerous to be that energy open ended. So we cover our radiating bodies with this armor of intellect, which allows little bits to come out in more coherent lines. And then the armor, as we get older and as societies calcify, the armor gets stronger and deeper and harder until finally here we are in this mess of a world that we're in right now, where the armor is so weird that nobody can say anything that to anybody much anymore.
yeah. Well, that's amazing because I always follow up this question with Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? And, that's like people who meditate. They go, okay, now think about not thinking. And then there's a bumper sticker on a car on my street and it says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel. So I like this feelings are armored by thinking. That was, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not. It's not in its primary way. That structural contrast is not meant to be a negative thing. It's actually a way of taking feelings into the world in a different way, of organizing them in a way that allows other things to be done. And I think that's okay, and that's good, and it has to be if we're if we're not going to be amoebas or little beings swirling around on the ocean bottom all the time. But we've gone a little far with it, and I think this whole category of thinking, believing, and knowing is so separated right now. I mean, thinking, believing, and knowing is like, yes, they are different ways of seeing the world. Believing something, thinking something, and knowing something, and feeling something. These four posts of interaction with our body and the outside world are amazingly different, and it's our job to put them together to become individual mensches, to be an individual mensch through these four pillars in some way.
4 pillars, really well divided. These are 2 questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
I would say I don't agree with that division. I don't want to sound like I'm kind of an old hippie, but although I was an old hippie, thinking is the soul is a construct for us right now. We construct. We may have a soul. We may not have a soul. Do I believe I have a soul? There is no one holding up a soul in front of me. I see your face, Gerry. I believe you to be a soul, even though I'm just seeing you on Zoom, and I never had a personal, physical embrace of any kind. So for me, the idea that souls and thinking have a causal any kind of effect or relate. That's hard for me to accept. I feel like something in the way we move reminds me of. There's a song like that. Oh, it's a Beatles song, right? Something in the way we are puts the radiance of a soul and the radiance of thinking next to each other, and they bounce off each other. They juggle around in the universe and inflect each other and cause shadows and shapes and something.
Yeah, back to, I'm a hypocrite myself too. And it goes into a lava lamp. That's what you described. It's sort of like that. But here's the second Turing question: can machines think?
I think if you talk about machines, then you have to say no. But if you talk about things that think, one could imagine that there was once a machine that became a thinking thing. One could imagine that our definition of machines are objects that serve us. That's basically what they are. So to say that a machine thinks puts us into big problems, because how are we going to deal with this thing that serves us? It's a slave to us, basically. And we're going to now say it's thinking. That makes a big pain in the ass for us to take a slave and put it into, it's equal to me in some way. So I don't really want to deal with that if I'm the average person thinking about machines. If, however, a machine, upon reaching a stage of radiance, of radiation, of combination of ingredients, the pillars and all that, can be accepted as a thinking thing, then then it's not a machine, then it's a thinking thing.
Yeah, it reminded me because both Phil Lesh of The Dead and Zappa's favorite book was More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon.
Yeah, that's
and
a
I
good
haven't
book,
read the book. I want to read the book and know why they made it so important in their lives. But just what you described was sort of that. Is it more than human? So when we see Hal in 2001 showing conscious emotion, more than just doing information or whatever they call machines doing, then it becomes a reality.
I
Once
mean,
it's in
what's
a movie, we think, oh, well, it's kind of true, but we don't go, well, that's made up. That's fantasy.
I mean, Gerry, to be truthful, how do I know you're thinking? How do I know you're not a machine there?
Right.
We got a pretty good setup for you to be a cartoon, and I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of things that you are
Yeah.
thinking, feeling, being in front of me, and I think in the what I guess what they call the solipsistic viewpoint, I am the only thinking being in the universe, and I create the universe in front of me from everything around me, and I have no proof that there is another thinking soul in this universe. But
Yeah.
that's not my point of view particularly. But you have to say to yourself, what gives me entree into your quote unquote soul, this interconnected thing, this surprise sharing, the unexpected flow of information that I couldn't get from myself, which play and playfulness gives to life. That is, I don't imagine I can create an existence where it surprises myself. I don't know about that. I think I would kind of know what was going to happen if I created it.
Yeah.
So someone else has to do that. So I think if that's the case, you're there. You have a soul. I have a soul. Here we are, soulfully trying to make some pleasure happen.
So good. There's a Zappa interview that he did in Toronto on TV, and he interviews himself. So he says, "Why did you make music?" And he says something, and the interviewer goes, "Fascinating." That's Frank. And then he asked Frank asked Frank another question, and he takes his glasses off again. He goes, "Extremely fascinating."
It's good
So
that someone can. Yeah, he played with that.
he
He was
played
playing
with
with it
it.
all. Yeah.
But he was really doing the phenomenon of everything he did was music. It's sort of like how you turn language into music, speaking sounds, everything. All his interviews are part of his big note. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what really, it wasn't just like, here I'm making music, here I'm doing an interview here. So here you touched on this, David, but I have to ask it. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think for better or worse, I pursue happiness, which is kind of a good way to get disappointed a lot. But meaning comes in whether I want to or not. I don't have to pursue it.
Right.
Happiness seems to be more elusive in some way because happiness is tied into expectation and cultural definitions and aging and time going by and how much memory you have, and the idea of happiness is a multi-pronged thing, unfortunately, or it's not, for me anyhow, it's not so simple.
Yeah, I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning tends to last.
Hmm. Well, one could say that rocks are around longer than smiles. Yes.
That is great. I still love that your comments on meaning earlier on. Like everybody's searching for meaning like it's so important. And I think that helped me. I appreciate that. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Well, this is another one of those circular things. I mean, when you read the books of the people who experimented with psychedelic drugs in the beginning of those times, the Learys and the pre-Learys and all
Yeah.
those folks, that in fact their perceptions and also guru type people and shamans, the whole thing of experiencing the world is not something that it exists without our mental intervention, our mental stream going into the perception of what comes. It's an interaction of the perception, the light, and the energy that comes into our brain and how our mind sets it up, as a hierarchy or as a framework. And our cultures are very strong. Frameworks are very perceptual frameworks are very, very strongly set up. So people who go outside of the perceptual frameworks are considered wackos or disturbers or destroyers, or in the best sense, they're allowed to be shamans or gurus if they're nice enough or whatever. I don't know, but we are involved in creating the world, I believe, at every moment. So you can change perceptions. It's not easy, but one can say you can change what is coming in. One doesn't always have to see everything the same. I hope that's the case. I feel that that's the case,
Yeah. It reminded me of, I ask the question often or ponder, who invented mental illness? So probably back in the days, they were the shamans of the town. And they were
We
like
used to.
tribe. They were the shaman. And then they come along. That dude's doing a little too much kooky shit. Now we got to put him away, because that's the great McLuhan line is, you can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital.
Yeah, that even doesn't work these days. But
that doesn't even work these days.
But think about it. If you think about the evolution of, I mean, again, hey, I'm just a generalist, but I like to think about these things. We came from animals. We came from chimps or gorillas or whatever, and they came from lemurs, and the lemurs came from cats, and the cats came from whatever, until all the way down to multicellular slime at some point, right? So this multicellular slime only could survive if it could detect danger, poison, a right amount of light to grow, or too much light, which would kill it. It had to do that, so that mutations of the slime, which were more effective, would help the community survive. Only if their mutations got too good, the rest of the community would wither and die, and they would become the inheritor of the community. So the question for us is, are we allowed to still evolve, to still mutate and show or develop and use something that would be the bettering of us, help us as humans, as inhabitants of this planet in some way? Or is mutation always going to lead to a survival of the fittest thing, which means death to the dummies, or death to the oldsters? This is kind of a real big thing. For me, it's a really big deal, because I feel, if I may be serious for 1 second here, I feel that the only way the human beings are going to survive right now into the next 1,000 years is if we mutate into Homo next step, because Homo sapiens is really screwed.
Yeah, Homo next step. That's good. That's good. It reminded me also of my nephew who's special needs, or now the name keeps changing, neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
And his sister said, no, he's not special needs, he's special abilities. And he had things like he did that all the regular people didn't do, that were more special. And she recognized that. And so why do you call it special needs when it's a special ability? Then why do you have to call it anything? But we seem, like you said, Homo sapiens into Homo, what was the word?
Next step.
Homo next step. That's good. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Oh, I think I have to say speed of light. I'd love to be able to think along a beam of light. I would love to go along with the beam of light and think with it, in which case the rest of the universe around me would be slowed down to an almost infinite slowness, and I could observe its percolation, through the ether as I was thinking these quick thoughts. So I think light's still faster.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Oh, I mean, at the beginning, I used the single word play.
Yeah.
And I use it as my beginning, because I think we all have our culture has misinterpreted the word play and turned it into sport.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that if I could just make play a non-competitive surprise fountain of laughter and and building outward, I would say that play would be the tool that we've abandoned more or less in the pursuit of being virtuosos, of being rich, of having a good life, of trying to be happy all the time, of all this stuff that we find ourselves hooked on, you know. And I know it's an idealistic thing, and I know that when people say to me, "What do you mean by play?" When I say to my students, when I have them, "Oh, you know, play with your voice for 1 minute," they say, well, "What do you mean, David? Play with my voice? What should I do? You know, what do you want?" I don't want to tell you what to do. That's not my job. You know, if I tell you what to do, it ain't play anymore. It's you trying to fill the expectation. So it's a kind of a lost sense that has calcified into these other things, into sport, into competitiveness, into points. You know, points on the Olympic points. Pretty soon they're going to have points for rock and roll guitar on the Olympics and points for improvising musicians on the Olympics. You know what I mean?
They do have it now. It's all how many hits do you get on your it's hits, you know,
That's
it's
right.
just it's bad. No, play is the most amazing, greatest word. I love that you said that as a tool. You totally got that. Now, the follow-up question is, what new toy do you suggest?
You know, I suggest, I did this once. It was in my most perverse sense of perversity. I try to find things that are unacceptable, and then find out why they're unacceptable. So I was working in an electronic music studio. I was a guest there, and as a very experimental electronic music studio, and as part of the residency, they allow you to work with their team to build an electronic instrument. You decide what kind of thing you want, you know, and they try to build it for you. So after much thought, because I was pretty uneducated about this, I said, you know what I would like to have? You know, there are these little things, they're called triggers, and they're like made from this thing called piezo electric they're little microphones, and if you tap them, they generate a current by being tapped. And if you put this little object onto a water bottle and you hit the water bottle, you'll hear the bubbling amplified through the electric microphone. And this little thing, you can use it as a trigger. It sends a current and electricity into a sound system, and it will allow a sound to happen. What I would like you to build for me is a trigger that is impossible to trigger. And they said, David, they said your description makes it impossible. It makes not possible to do it. Okay, well, let me. Then I said, okay, I will amend so we can actually make an object. Most triggers are so easy to trigger that they become bad, cliched objects. You just you hit something and it makes a sound like a child's toy. Build me a trigger that's so hard to trigger that I have to work like hell. I have to smash it and hammer it and jump on it and throw it out and run a car over it. And then when finally something happens, what will it be? You know, that would be amazing.
It was so hard to trigger. No, make me a nice working trigger. No, make me a real hard one. I gotta pound it with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Pete Townsend learned all that from his German art teacher. That to me was like, yeah, that, you know, okay, so that was what do you worry that was so what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, more than I used to. When I was younger, I would worry about how I would organize the next tour, or what musician I could play with, or how I could change my drums to make them more interesting, or how I could make my hands more fast, or who I should talk to change what I do. what was the next step? What did I have to do? What did I have to do? What were these steps? And now at my point in life, it's more like, can I wake up tomorrow and still feel some pleasure?
Yeah.
I mean, that's hard to say. It's a little bit. It could be seen as being depressing, but it's just the truth, you know. I mean, it's not the accretion of memories, the lifetime of memories and interactions and things you do make the things you've done be so much a part of you that they don't glimmer or sparkle for you so much anymore. They're just there, you know, like the barnacles on a whale's skin. They tell you about the life and the climate where the whale was and what they've done, but they don't make the whale feel good or bad, and they just are there. And so I'm looking for the can I still wake up in the morning and find some fun things to do and laugh about and enjoy with my partner and with myself, you know?
Totally agree. Like, I don't wanna get in cars, I don't wanna get in airplanes. Okay, I had all that, that's alright, but, you know, people are like, "Come on, do this." It's like, too much. I just wanna ride my bike to the beach, sit here and talk to people and, you know, I totally understand the younger and the now. Okay, so McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're
Mm.
broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, David, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I think it's more it's overload for almost everyone. There's a certain point where you feel the overload of intensity that the world puts out. I mean, 9 billion people, and not just people, but animals and trees and everything, and atmosphere, and it's amazing that we can stay in loving communication with each other, given this intensity of existence around us. So the next meta level of quote unquote artistic activity, where a person reshapes the input and puts that out as an unknown thing or as a new part of themselves, is what we're looking for. But it's also, wow, it's another amazing thing I want to take in. I want to see where I can put it, but there's so much. How am I going to put that together with this? It's like it's a lot. It's a lot for people, you know. And we don't live in a tribe anymore. We don't live in a group of 35 people where there's a shaman who can take us into the hut one night and do a ceremony over us to make us mellow, to make us understand where we are one to one. It doesn't happen that way anymore. So it's a lot of work we're doing all the time to keep that some kind of openness to what's being given out, you know. It's not easy.
Yeah, I have a lot of homeless friends in Venice here, and I always sit at the corner of Venice and Lincoln on my bike waiting for the light to change. Half my life is waiting for the light to change. And I look, and the homeless guy's in the gutter in a cardboard box smiling, and everybody's in their cars like this. You know, I was like, "Hey, what's wrong with this picture?" And Michael Ventura says the best thing you can do with a homeless person is look them in the eye.
Yeah.
So that sort of overload that you're talking about, I think, drives people to get away from the normal society and just seek out some sort of other humanity connection. You know, like a human connection as simple as looking someone in the eyes.
You know, when I was touring around a lot in my early music days, every so often at a festival, I would get an interview from a newspaper, and the interviewers were very. They really had never heard my music. They had read something about me and whatever, and they had a list of questions. And almost invariably I got asked the desert island question. If I was alone on a desert island, which 10 records would I take with me? Okay. Like as if I'd have a record player and electricity on the desert island, but okay. And so at some point I said, okay, I'm going to get this question all the time, and I'll make an answer. So I made a list. I accepted it. Then they said to me, if you were alone on a desert island, how would your music change? And I said, if I was alone on a desert island, why would I play music? Why would I play stuff for myself? It's not
Yeah.
about playing it for myself. It never was about playing it for myself.
Wow.
What am I going to do? Make a drum set like as if I was still in my living room somewhere and think that the palm trees are my audience and I'm going to make a concert and they're all going to go like that at the end? I mean, give me a break. I would just be like trying to live and survive in the sun and talk to the fish if I could find a way. Come on.
Yeah. They're brilliant. Do artists have moral obligation?
This is a complex question because there's a lot of meat inside those few words you just said, moral obligation to everyone in the world, to one person, to the creator of the universe, to my best friend, moral obligation. I'm obligated because I did something. Yeah. Obligation is because I either did something or I get something. You gave me something, so I'm obligated. Gee williger, there's a lot inside that statement, artists, if I have to talk about artists as every person who can put out something that's special to them, have only the obligation to say, this is me.
Yeah.
And I hope it doesn't hurt anybody as I'm doing it. That's all.
That's good. That's really good. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm afraid of habits.
Yeah.
Which are coming from old ideas, but which are brought into being because of the fear of the new to a certain extent, because the new is blank. The new is empty. The new is waiting to be formed, and habits build a house for you. They build a home for you. They give you a bed to live in. They make you feel comfortable. So it's an ever ongoing battle between the new and the old, between habits and comfort, and this edge of unknowing. So I've always said to myself, I plagued myself as a performer to the point of really too much of saying, I have to do a new thing at every concert. I don't care if it's 10 seconds long or 3 seconds long or 5 minutes long, one new thing I never did. And if I don't do that, I am screwed. I should stop immediately, And this became such a horrible mantra for me that it took a lot of joy out of the act of doing, this idea of having to do, being forced to do the new instead of allowing my accumulation of goodies to make the new. So it's a big balance. It's a juggling act.
Teaching me so much. I love that line. I went through a lot just hearing that about, I have to challenge myself like that. And then McLuhan said, carefully make plans, then do the opposite. And that sounds good, but to do it, to actually do that, because I am, we're habitual, I think.
But what's funny, when the opposite is a very beautiful concept. I use it a lot in my teaching. I say to students, okay, do a solo, do a 1 minute solo, whatever it is, dancing, moving, performing, singing, drumming, whatever it is. And then we're going to talk about it. So they do a 1 minute solo, which is invariably 7 minutes long, and they don't know no one has an idea about a short amount of time. They do a solo. We sit down and I say, okay, tell me about your solo. What did you do? And they said, I don't really remember. And I say, wait a minute. You did it. You started it. You ended it. It came from you. What happened to your memory? Did you turn it off completely? Wow, show me how to do that. I'd like to know how to turn my memory off completely. Or did you carve a part of your brain in which you store things that you never look at again? You know, what did you do with that time? And they say, oh, okay, I'll try to find it. Then they say, okay, I did this and I did this. I started this way. I did this. I did this. I said, okay, now I would like you to do another solo and do the opposite.
Whoa!
Now, this really makes people crazy, because for them, for most everybody, the opposite means one grand thing, one gigantic grand opposite that is like the alternate, another universe somewhere, like the parallel universe somewhere that is like going backwards.
Yeah.
But the opposite is not one thing. The opposite is many things.
Many.
You know, the opposite. You change one thing and you get a completely opposing thing that never would have existed, except for the first thing that happened that you are now opposing to it. So to think of the opposite as a compound, complex sphere of possibilities is really mind opening.
Yeah, it's many things. It's funny because I get these people I really want to interview, and they respond, and then they go, "I'll pass." And then I write a nice email and I go, "Please reconsider." And then I put the McLuhan line: carefully make plans, then do the opposite. The way you described the word opposite was so important to me, because it is many things. They're like, oh, it reminded me of Don Preston, who plays with Frank and is a great, musician. He's played with Carla Bley and he says, "Oh, you don't think when you play music." I mean, we'll get into this when we talk about music and your creation, but he says, "Don't think." I'm like, good luck. How can you turn your brain off? You have all this Rolodex of riffs in your head. You know what's going on. How do you let that all go? And you said it earlier, unlearn. But what is unlearning? What is opposite? It's like, it's not, oh, I hit 3 notes this time, now I'll do the opposite, I'll hit no notes. Well, is that just, that's it? That's not, it's more than that.
Yeah. I mean, for example, like what I've taught myself to do when I'm at a period of difficulty with improvisation or knowing what to do, how to make something change, I taught myself, or as an exercise, but it works very well as a performance mode. So I'm playing a solo, right? And I have an object on my table. Say, I have an object on my table, and this is sitting there, and it's been there. The whole concert's been sitting on my table as I'm singing and making loops and whatever. And then at some point, as I'm singing, my hand reaches out, picks up the object, and slowly, while I'm singing and I'm still singing, it moves the object through the field in front of me, and I'm not really paying attention to it, but it's moving. And as it's moving, that object creates an attention system with my audience. They see the world differently because this thing means something. They don't know what. It's there in front of them, saying hello. It's going through. And as this grabbing of attention happens, my mind goes to a place I couldn't predict. And then the thing goes, and then I'm there, right there with the new thing that I didn't know how to get to before.
Unbelievable.
That's what happens.
Such a good example. It reminded me also of Twyla Tharp, becomes the most, dominant dance force in America, and everybody wants her to dance to their music. David Byrne, everybody, do one to my, like, for some period of time when she started her first dance troops, it's like, I don't know, 3 or 5 years, she only danced to no music. Like, she knew eventually it's going to be a merge of music and dance, movement and dance, music. And I'm going to just milk it now, no music. And I was like, wow, that's sort of like, do the opposite first, and then you're going to never be able to go back to that problem.
That's also like trusting a certain kind of self-trust in time, in your timing and evolution of your work that you have is necessary to have a considerable amount of self-trust that the direction that you're moving in will flower at some point, or
Yeah.
it will wilt, or it may wilt, but it will feed something else. That's necessary.
Wow. Okay. So you have ESP because the next question is, what can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yeah, sure. My earliest memory is going to the doctor to have my tonsils removed when I was a little before 3 years old. I was told I was just not quite three, and going to the doctor's office and playing with a toy in the waiting room, which was a kind of a musical sound toy. Strangely enough, a little bird cage made of wood that you pulled. It had wheels, and as you pulled it, the wheels turned a gear inside the bird cage, which there were little balls inside the cage, and when the balls hit the gears, they would pop up in the air and hit a little bell at the top of the cage. So you'd pull it along, and kind of it was a sound sculpture for babies,
Yeah.
before anybody ever had said the word sound sculpture. And that was my first memory that I really have, and I can picture that object still.
Beautiful. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Well, you got to look at it as a blessing, because if you don't have it, you vegetable, man. If you don't have it, someone is feeding you. If you don't have memory, I mean,
Yeah.
you got to have something. You got to be able to. We live in time. We either create it, we create it, and we live in it. And memory is the divider of time. If we don't have memory, we can't divide time in any way. And we are always. I don't know. It seems. I don't know. Do plants have memory? Do they? There's been a lot of investigation lately about plants feeling things more than there was. There was some books 30 or 40 years ago about do plants have feelings.
Like a plant or something. Yeah.
But this whole idea of memory, when it comes down to it, is, as I've tried to read, is the interaction of certain chemicals in your brain cells stored in very small amounts in neurons and then electrically flashed across synapses. I mean, it's a process that probably it almost seems like a rock could do this process very slowly. They've been talking about rocks having consciousness. Have you read this stuff?
Yeah.
Rocks. Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, rocks just exist at a very slow rate of thinking. Rocks have a 5 billion year evolution period of a consciousness. So, I mean, the process of exchanging chemicals between parts of your being, or electricity jolts between parts of your being, is not exclusive to our human brains. So I think that probably some concept of memory might exist in all physical objects in a strange way. I don't know.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what was that impact?
Well, I mean, I talked about my father before. Should I do that again?
Sure. Whatever you want. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I mean, as the first son, as the oldest son of three sons, I got the parental love pretty heavy and pretty good at the beginning, as I was the firstborn, and also the expectation of what I could do, what I could accomplish as the firstborn. And as I said, my father showed joy and pleasure from sitting at a drum set that he bought when he was 15 years old in 1929. And that he showed me on that same drum set. I learned to play on that same drum set that he learned to play on. And this was inspiring in the way that I couldn't deny it, because I was breathing inspiring the same air as my father. Talk about inspiration, I mean, his hands holding the drumsticks, my hands holding the drumsticks, his hands holding my hands holding the drumsticks. This was a physical transfer of energy. This was in a certain way as shamanic as it gets for a 20th century middle class American boy. in terms of transferring energy, psychic energy. So yeah, my father
Same.
did it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful, David. So well described. I could envision those. Okay, same question outside your immediate family. Someone who had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I'd love to say the fact that even though I never met him, John Coltrane was it for me. Um, uh, Basically changed my whole awareness of what music was and what virtuosity was or needed to be or could not be, and why one should play an instrument or make a sound and what it was for, and where it could lead you that you wouldn't know it would lead you to if you went into it as fully as you could. And yes, I think that John Coltrane basically changed my life from starting into the music world into really going into my own way.
Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, we were genetically Hebraic, so Jewish, but very non-observant. So my parents were first-generation Americans. My grandparents were from Russia and Romania, and the practice of the religion was basically gone by the time we were us kids came along. We observed the certain forms for the pleasure of my grandparents, for the obligation of making my grandparents feel good. We went through some Jewish Hebrew training, to read Hebrew letters and all that stuff in school. But religiously, it was I was and am completely unobservant. Religion to me, the Jewish religion and all other religions are basically, if in my harshest judgment, hopeless scams.
Yeah. Do you pray?
No, I don't pray. I hope.
I hope. That's good. If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
You did a good job, kid. From what I gave you, you did good.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't think people are born evil. I don't think it's innately. I don't think it's in the genes to be evil. I think that some forces of culture interact with upbringing to create
Yeah.
people who use and manipulate other people, which I would call is my definition of evil. Not magically evil, but to use and manipulate in a hurtful way human beings. And I think there are people like that who basically they don't think anyone else exists but them. Pretty much, they are kind of solipsistic in a way, narcissistic, and they exist. And if someone brings me in a room with a person like that, when I was younger, it was really hard to deal with people like that because some of them were teachers, some of them were almost gurus, in that I thought I could learn something from. But to be confronted with, as a 17, 18-year-old up and coming musician, to be confronted with a manipulation where you had to say, I accept the shit you will give me for the flower that will grow out of it. If that compromise is a hard one. And there are people who are dealing on those levels. And if you as you grow up, you have to find out how or if you want to deal with that.
It's amazing. You anticipated the question. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? Alan Watts said, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Excuse me. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, I agree with that in a sense that it's like the early concept of that we all have a secret name, and Our secret name is our power, and we can't tell everyone our secret name, or we lose our power. So if you if you give in to an enemy or accept the enemy, in some way you give them your name, your power, and that puts you into the show. That puts you, makes you a little bit of the puppet into the puppet show. So I agree with what Alan Watts said about that. I do also agree with the last thing he's.
Yeah, can I just go back for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
What's the origin of we all have a secret name, and if we tell it, we lose some of our power? Do you know do you know the origin of where you got that from?
No, I don't. But I mean, a lot of those books, books from the 50s and 60s writing about mythology. Campbell, and all those books.
Yeah, okay, that's probably Campbell. Good. No, I just wanted, that's amazing. That really helped me a lot. But the last one I said was Fellini. I need an enemy. And actually, with what you said, I did want to add this one. Walt Whitman. I no doubt deserve my enemies. That is like, that's horrible way, but it, so anyways, yeah, I think it was the Fellini one you were saying.
Yeah, I never would have mentioned Fellini and Walt Whitman in the same sentence, but I'm glad you did, because I need an enemy, and right, that's what Fellini
said. It's amazing.
And I think what that means is a kind of energy charge.
Yeah,
I need a reflection that is not me, that doesn't agree with me, that is an opposite, a possible opposite. One could think of enemies as possible opposites, as one of those oppositional things that I could choose to find this enemy force that exists, and I could learn from it, I could learn and get something from it. Instead of being repelled or controlled or used or turned into it, I could learn from it and take that information as, we need them in some way.
That's,
and as long as it doesn't control you and turn you into some kind of a automaton,
Don't turn into your enemy, I always say. But all the ones I leave off, you're kind of anticipating. American Indians, indigenous natives say your enemy's your best teacher.
Yeah, I think that's also, that has some resonance because one does not look for a teacher who feels exactly as you feel. Why do you want that teacher? If they feel and think it, why are you basically one? We are hoping to expand ourselves into unknown field, like I'm a balloon, and I start off like a little teeny mini water balloon, and I'm expanding into this empty space. I don't know what's here. I don't know what's there. Maybe that's nice and fun and friendly and fuzzy, and maybe that's pointy and going to break me. I don't know. But if I don't go into it, I'm never going to grow. I'm never going to change. I'm just going to be this little teeny water balloon. So I got to make a shot. I got to hope that that stuff is out. Something is out there that will give me something I don't have, and I can. Maybe I have to start over again. Like I had a teacher who forced me to reconsider what it was to be a leader of musicians. What did it mean to be the leader? What did I want to get from or out of the people I was leading? And that teacher did it in a way that I so firmly disagreed with. I had to I learned I couldn't do it that way. I wouldn't have learned that. I would have dabbled in it until it hurt.
Unbelievable. That I called up Shelly Manne, one of the great jazz drummers, on a phone call to a radio station once and just said, what was it like playing with Zappa? He said, that guy knew what he wanted and he got what he wanted. And I was like, holy shit, that was an amazing comment. But this is sort of the follow-up. Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Someone said villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts again, but the question is, does punishment work?
Well, if you're a dog, punishment seems to do something. If you're a fly, punishment doesn't do anything. Only killing you does something, pretty much, right? If you're a human, punishment does something really weird. We don't know what punishment will do inside your brain. No one can say what effect punishment will have on a human if they start being punished at age 3 months or 6 years or 27 years or 72 years. That punishment, whatever, the same punishment will have radically different effects on that being. So punishment is an unpredictable, ungraspable. It has results that one can't predict. So one must be aware and wary of the power one wields when one deals with punishment.
David, you're a great listener, but you're also an original thinker. These are amazing how I've asked these for 40 years and rarely get such sort of different kind of responses. That's what I'm seeking always, because I always go, well, 80%.
You're asking these things. You want to go there, so we're going there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I usually go 80% of people say this, and I tell people kind of how the other people have answered it. James Joyce, and I appreciate it, so thank you. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago, and he basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, baby, this is the way it is. I mean, it's 20,000 years after human beings started talking to each other, and a lot of words have been spoken, and a lot of shadow plays have happened, and a lot of puppets have been dangled, and a lot of meaning has been made, and a lot of investment has been done, and a lot of characters have been created, and we are far, far away from even seeing most of the trees that exist outside of our cave anymore. We are not those people. We need something to drag us back by the hair to being able to see that tree again. Like I went when I was 18. I went to Tanglewood concert series, and outside concerts in the summer. I went up there. I didn't know what was playing, and Leonard Bernstein was conducting the Ninth Symphony of Bruckner at the Shed, and I was out there, and I had no ticket. I was outside in the back, way in the back, and I was there. This music blew me away so much that I just went over to the nearest big tree, and I was like holding on to this tree because it was like, for me, that was what it was doing. So this brought me back to that. I didn't go there because I had to hear Leonard Bernstein or because I had to see a big orchestra. I was waiting. I was hoping. I wished for an experience that would, I wanted that experience that it gave me. So this idea that art, all the things we do, the things you do, the things that we're on this incredible electronic network now, and to imagine that this could possibly have enough power inside it, that the words coming through this network that you are forcing out of my brain, that could then cause someone else to go outside and look at a tree or pick up a leaf or pet a dog. It's really amazing that could happen. And so more power to it. Let it happen.
That is so. We're on, what we're on, David? It's called television telephone, and it first came to humans, sort of exposed to them in 1939 at the New York World's Fair. Then in 1968, we saw it as a reality. In 2001, the guy calls his daughter from a spaceship on television telephone. Right now, we are across the world live. That is because all we had to do is hit a button on our computer. That is to me unbelievable. So,
But you know what else, Gerry? You know, like when when I started to sing, so more and more when I was moving away, adding voice to my drums and going further,
yeah,
I began to be very unhappy with the idea of the telephone. So 1970, say 1973, 4, 5. I began to see the telephone as a tool of the corporate devil because the telephone was squashing the human voice into the frequency range of 1500 to 3000 hertz, this very limited frequency. So that you would sound like, hi, Gerry, how you doing? This is how I sound. You don't hear any more of my voice to say, yeah, you're my grandmother, you're my grandfather, but that's it. It doesn't matter. We all sound like this. So like, nobody could hear any of this going on. That didn't exist. My voice was being tampered with by a corporation that discovered they could make money sending a certain amount of information over a limited spectrum, and I would pay them for it in exchange for losing the information that my voice could really transmit. So, why am I saying this? Because now, here we are in a different world. We see each other. We get more information from each other. What price are we paying now for this? Believe me, I don't think it's all free. I think there's little compromises being made everywhere, you know?
Yeah, no, that's why Zoom gives you 40 minutes free. I take advantage of it, but StreamYard, you got to pay more than Zoom.
Really?
It's very interesting. I love that tool of the corporate devil because that's, on the Captain Beefheart album, he talks about, or he calls the phone the devil's horn. And he uses the sound that you just talked about compressed on that album on one piece. And I was fortunate enough he called me 52 times in 1991 in the middle of the night, once a week. And I say, dude, I was listening to, Lick My Decals. It's an amazing album. And he goes, play the song for me. So I would literally hit my cassette machine. It would go through cheesy audio cassette into his phone, and he would listen to his own music through the phone. So that to me, that compression and all that, unbelievable.
But that's a different experience. That's adding a loop to a loop, a personal loop to another list,
Right. But I'm saying we said, when cell phones first came in, everyone goes, oh my God, this is the end of the world. It's horrible. And now I says, get over it. We were all raised with telephones. The same, just because you care. So, I mean, what I learned from McLuhan, and we learned it from Joyce, was every invention has services and disservices. If you suss out both, then you get the big picture, you get a more comprehensive pattern recognition, and you can analyze, study, probe how it shapes your behavior. When you're by yourself, you can go, I hate cell phones or I love them, but you live in a cell phone world, so get over it. It's good to, so.
Another example for me was the in the 80s, I tried to do a lot of radio programs for streaming from National Public Radio, sending up to the satellite and then down to the stations. And I did one that was called called Sound Spots. And Sound Spot, I wanted to get really, really like my music like my music from all the people I worked with, wonderful, crazy, eccentric, personal people, onto American radio. It was not unheard on American radio, except for a few college stations here and there. So I listened to NPR and I began to analyze their format just for myself. I would write down what they were doing time-wise and segment-wise. And I decided that the best way I could do it, they really wanted to have 3-minute segments, exactly 3 minutes. And there were plenty of moments in public radio when the station cut away from the public radio feed and had a 3-minute hole in their programming. And they needed things for that 3-minute hole, and they needed to know it was exactly 3 minutes. So I then produced a series of 75 3-minute programs with an intro, an outro, a story and 2 minutes of new music in the middle. So the whole thing was exactly 3 minutes. And I sent them out. It was my most successful radio show because the stations didn't give a shit how weird the music was. They only wanted it to be 3 minutes long.
Wow.
Most of them, not everybody, but they put it on a cart and they said, "Oh, it's 3 minutes of noon. The news is coming 3 minutes. Let's put Sound Spot on. It's 3 minutes long." Boom, and Sound Spot went on, and there come, and then came this crazy music that would never get heard otherwise. And so you use the system that has blocked you out, but you find that every block has little escape holes. You can escape entryways you can get into.
Dude, you did that so well. That's beautiful. I'm sure I heard those growing up. So then they affected me. So David, where's the tipping point when you go from your dad's influence of playing drums, then you play drums, jazz or rock? There's this tipping point where you go, this is my new kind of calling. I'm going to integrate improvisational experiments with the voice.
Tipping point was very simple. As I opened my ears to the possibility of what being a drummer meant, that the percussion, world percussion, classical percussion, ethnic percussion, had sounds and instruments that weren't used by the jazz world, even the avant-garde jazz world, and that the drum set itself was a industrial object formed out of an originally personal object put together by drummers out of pieces. The drum set that I was playing came from a company called Gretsch or Ludwig or Rogers, and it even had its name stamped on the front of the bass drum. So I was advertising for the company as I was playing this drum set, and this made me think, why am I allowing this company to tell me what the drums are? Why am I stuck in this? Why can't I change this instrument my way? So I began to add things, metal, wood, stone, pods, seeds, plastic, other things to the drum set, draping it and making a kind of a personal big sculpture out of it. And I began to change the sound of the drum by putting objects on the drums, and I began to make my own cymbals by hammering them. And every time I expanded the sound range of my drum, so I made it, if I found a really hard metallic sound, that little sound needed a as an opposite, as a contrast. But I didn't have an in my drum set, so I had to build an that would go along with the kick, so I could have them work with each other. So every new sound demanded another sphere of complementary sound, and suddenly it was like take off the drums. And then at a certain point, as I had so much stuff to play and so many things to hit and so many sounds, as I was moving so quickly and so much energy was going out to produce the rhythms and sound I wanted to produce, I was holding my breath. So I would force my breath into my body and push my air to play. But this had the opposite effect because I would run out of oxygen and my hands would lose power. My fingers would vibrate and buzz and the sticks would fall out of my hands when I hit something the wrong way and I couldn't play anymore. So what I wanted to do was stymied by what I was trying to do in a very weird cycle. So then I said, to fix this, what can I do? I have to breathe. I have to breathe. How can I know that I'm breathing? Oh, I have to make a sound. I'll make a sound. So I'll breathe with a sound. Very simple, very simple. No, not music, not art, nothing. Just so I'm breathing. And then I did that for a while, and it worked. It kept me going. And then I said, well, this is interesting, David. You're breathing and you're making sound, but you could do something more with the sound. You could really make this into something interesting. Could I do the same thing with my voice that I was doing with my hands? Could I actually duplicate? Could I do that? Yes, I could do that. It took some practice, and I started to do that. Then I said, can I make a sound that is the opposite of what my drumming is? Can I do that? And can I make my drumming the opposite of what my voice is? Then everything again took off. It never stopped, unfortunately better. It never stops taking off once you're into taking off, And then the voice became to be like a source of infinite possibilities to meld with the drumming, and then to in some way, I began to leave the drumming. I did not need, or I must not be with the drumming. I can use my voice alone. That became another route for me to take in my life.
Wow, because the breathing, that reminds me of conscious breathing, which I learned kind of from doing yoga.
Mm-hmm.
How did you tune into conscious breathing? Was it through Eastern philosophies at all, or yoga, or what was the path for that?
I had no idea about conscious breathing. I had no idea about that. I only had the idea that there was a way to move the process forward, and there was a way to block the process. I had these ideas that I was now involved with in the incorrect thought that I was moving the process forward by holding my breath. I was blocking it. So therefore, I had to change my viewpoint. And I knew, of course, we knew about yoga and we knew about breathing, and I'd read Baba Ram Dass and all this stuff as the 70s had been in my brain.
Right.
But I was a middle class jazz drummer. I wasn't so much into the world of yoga. Although a lot of the dancers we worked with at the time in the early 70s were definitely into yoga and knew a lot about that. It just was necessary to go. It felt necessary when you put yourself in the frame that you want to keep on moving. Certain things become necessary. You don't even have to decide it anymore.
It's really good awareness. And then Cage doing prepared piano, and even Art Ensemble of Chicago using siren whistles. Are these things that are happening around you and go, are you finding this on your own? I mean, it's sort of like, it sounds like a combination, but were there a few people like that opened up?
Yeah, there were. I was by no means the first or the innovator with this idea. My information came from people like the Art Ensemble, Milford Graves, the percussionist. Cecil Taylor was very, very important for me. His way of playing, and it was for me actually a kind of a drumming virtuoso on the piano. Rashid Ali, a drummer for Coltrane later on, who I actually met once and played on my drums once. It was a wonderful experience for me. There were lots of people who came before me, several people who came before me. And Cage was very important for me in the fact that one could do what one saw had to happen at the time it had to happen without deciding the structure completely. The structure would form itself and be available for people to investigate. I was not responsible for all structure all the time. That for me was a very Cagean thought. The world would help me with structure if I allowed it. So there were lots of people.
Yeah, that helped, David. Thank you. I asked for 90 minutes. We're at 90. Can you go a little longer?
Sure.
10, 20, or 30 minutes. What works for you?
You the man. We'll only get this once probably in our lives. So let's go as long.
No, I want to ask for a part 2. Like 4-6 months down the line, we can really get into it. But right now, what would you feel comfortable doing?
We can do another 15, 20 minutes, whatever you like.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, David. It's outstanding. I appreciate it. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Well, if my intent is to make, if I'm a comedian and my intent as a comedian is to make you laugh, is my intent to be congratulated that you laughed? I mean, who cares about my intent? That intent inspired me.
That's good.
The intent inspired me to make a thing happen. Right. That's the word. That's what intent. The intent is the inspiration to go where you can go.
Yeah. but that's the lead in. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're composing your piece? You're probably, I mean, how much are you composing live? You have compositions you write beforehand. So how much are you on the pieces that you compose that aren't live improv? When you're composing a piece, how much are you thinking of your audience?
If I'm composing it to be heard on the radio, in other words, I've made the whole thing myself, or for a couple of other people to play on, then I'm not focused exclusively on the audience. I'm focused on the players, or I'm focused on an idea that I'm working on,
Yeah.
on a text. Like, for example, I was for quite a while very, very excited about the text of Italo Calvino, the Italian writer, and loved his text very much, and thought they were so rhythmic and beautiful, and I used them as inspirational fantasies. So that was important that I had that. But still, inside the composition, I was never a really notational composer. I would make a picture, a drawing, a 3-dimensional thing for myself, or a 2-dimensional shape, which I would try. I wasn't so much using the scale of the normal notational paper. If I had to write a melody for someone else to play, yes, I would do that. But that was not my main focus. My main focus was to capture a length of time in which something would happen in a certain way, and it could happen. It could vary. I could vary it, or the person who was doing it could vary it, as long as it approached the idea of the amount of time, and something could happen, a change here, a stop here, and then something else could happen, and this. That I'm not a dictator about those things. And if I make a complete composition, I'm always excited when it goes completely bananas, when something happens that I would never imagine happened. I only can feel good about that, not to control it all,
Yeah. That's Beefheart says it's black ants crawling on white paper. and there, I think there's a YouTube of you looking at this score, and it looks like
Christian Markley,
yeah. Oh, Christian Markley. Oh my God. Yeah, that was amazing. That was really
well. I mean, that's a good example. Christian made this manga scroll. It's a long scroll of paper on which is all he's collaged all this pictures from manga, Japanese manga comics. All the noises that came out of that they wrote sounds for all the noises. So like splash, clam, scoop, sack, that kind of stuff. And they were all written down with funny little graphics and explosions and exclamation points. So he made this long scroll about this, and he had singers sing this scroll as their score. So every singer who approached it made a completely different event out of it, because it was it was their psyche that was interpreting this picture.
Visual. Yeah, we saw that in Batman. Yeah. Same thing. So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Like knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter and a camera projector extends our eyelid. And maybe religion or philosophy extends non-tangible consciousness. What the two tools that you use, what humanness does the drum extend? Or you could just say the drumstick. What humanness does it extend? And then what does electronics extend? Because those are two of your main tools, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. So drums basically focus on the idea of touch as a primary human interactive tool. Touch, one person touching another conveys amazingly infinite nuances, right?
Yeah.
So if I can take my physical touch, onto a drum skin, or onto a piece of metal, or onto a bunch of leaves or tree pods or bells, if I can extend my touch into that and somehow make people feel enough so that there's a resonance, it's not an automaton that is touching these things. You can make a player piano, which makes great sound, but for me, it was always about this idea that the human touch has I've got a hand. My hand has muscles. My muscles take time to move. My
Right.
brain sends a command. My brain and my feelings, my interaction sends a command to my arm and hand to move in a certain way. That I touch the drum at that point. Either it works the way I thought it would work or it doesn't. If it works the way I thought it would work, I might move to the next thing. If it doesn't, I might do it again because I wanted to. So time goes by in the search to make the touch spring out of the body.
Yeah. Wow.
That's one thing for me that's important about drumming. It was always about that, and it was the same for the voice, because voice is even more primal. Although I'm not touching an object when I sing or speak, I am creating waves of air going into the world, which are then interacting with your ear. They're going into your ears, these waves modulated by my little teeny vocal cords and thought about by my brain, which is very close to my vocal cords, closer than you'll ever get, goes into your ears, man. And then I can't control it anymore. You have to, you change it. You make, this is so beautiful about touch. For me, how to touch. So that's drumming and singing.
David, let me interrupt because that's tactility. McLuhan says TV is his whole thing on tactility was explained by you. I mean, that was amazing. But do you know how Zappa's teenager and he's in church and he's watching the choir sing and he sees the candles move, the flame moves because the air pushes the candle, and he goes, well, music is air molecule sculptures.
Yeah, it's true. It's totally true.
Yeah.
So then we get to electronics.
Yeah.
I basically see no difference between the moving of air from my voice or drums and the moving of air through membranes coming from a speaker. I see no difference in the air movement. Air movement is air movement. The difference is purely that an electronic source can shortcut. It has no brain. An electronic source has no brain to get in the way to form the timing, to stop. The timing is different. Things can happen that a brain can't do because of time. Like I don't operate at the speed of light. Electronics, it works at the speed of light, basically. So it can do things with sound that I, as a human, can't do. But and I've worked on this very much since I was in the first time in the early times in the 8-track recording studio. The guy an engineer would play something. How do you like that, David? Okay, it sounds good. And then he would fast forward my tape, 8 tracks, unmixed. He would fast forward it, and I said, "Ooh, that sounds great." Fast forward, so fast. Really, that sounds great. And I would try to imitate it, not because I wanted to sound like that, but because I could get something from that, a new thing. And then I say, play it backwards. And he would go, okay. And he would play it backwards. I said, wow, man, I can do something with that back. And so for me, electronics gives a new world of information to humans that they couldn't access otherwise. So I find electronic music, when it's done with the same intensity as live music, with the same explorative tendencies, beautiful.
That was amazing. Do you know Motz and Morgan, those guys who played with Frank when they were teenagers?
I only know of them.
Yeah, Motz is blind.
Motz is the drummer, right? Motz is the drummer.
Morgan's the drummer. Motz
Morgan.
is the artist. Right. And they're amazing. They played together for 40 years, but they got to play with Frank in their teens, and I've worked with them a little. And Motz can sing tape backwards almost perfect. Like it doesn't sound like you're kind of imitating tape going back. Yeah. I mean, I was like, how'd you do? Because, probably because of not having sight, his hearing might be more astute to finding every letter. Yeah. So what's the function of music? Good laugh.
Function. My father used to say. My father had some funny things he would say. His teaching lessons for his children. He would say to when we called them on the phone or came to visit. He would say, "So, are you functioning?" And all we were supposed to answer was, "Yes, Dad, we're functioning." There was no question that we weren't allowed not to function. Functioning
Yeah,
was primal.
yeah,
So so function is a powerful word. It has to do with use in society.
yeah,
So what is the use of music in society? That's the question you're asking me. That's how I see the question. What
yeah,
is the use of music in society? Now, the use of music in society, as we know, is to fill the background, pretty much.
yeah.
When I and you were younger, I mean, I don't. I'm sorry. It's not. I'm making a big generalization now, but at a certain point in time, and for many people, music was a way to understand where you stood in the world, what was important in the world to you. Music would give you a standing point. This means this is important to me. This feels right to me. This is where I am. This takes me further. I don't know why. I don't know what it means, but Coltrane does it. Zappa does it. Ladysmith Black Mambazo does it. John Cage does it. Whatever. These people do it. I can't tell you more than that. So therefore, for me, this music functioned in it built a kind of musical world society for me. So the function of music, the place of music in society, changes over our lifetimes. For my parents, the function of music was basically, well, first of all, there wasn't much live music in my parents' and grandparents' life. So the function of music was weddings, bar mitzvahs, and funerals, ceremonial. That was where music was, and 20,000 years ago, the function of music also was, one could say maybe it was also, in that case, ceremonial, maybe playful, maybe ceremonial. You know that there's a tribe in New Guinea. I have a friend who was a sociologist, music socioanthropologist, who went to New Guinea, who studied Stephen Feld, who studied with this group of people who have no word for music. There is
Oh
no
my
word.
God. Are you
This he
kidding?
said he worked with them for years. He went with them in the jungle. Every sound around them was the field of sound, and they were part of it. There was no music to be made, and they sang, but it was not music. It was the sound of being alive. So the function of music is the sound of being alive. Okay, I like that.
Sound of being alive, sound of being alive. Well, first of all, I freaked out because I've used this line by McLuhan for years. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. Now, out of the blue, I've never heard this. New Guineas have no word for music.
Yeah.
And then Stravinsky gave lectures on music means nothing.
Yeah, that's a hard one to understand, but okay, I'll try to
Right, but
absorb
I
that
mean,
one.
again, it's not. It's like, well, that back to that meaning thing. But it's like, well, two guys. One great guy says, learned friend says, music's function is to dance. Okay, I hear that. Music's function is Mickey Hart, the drummer for Dead. Warning, oh, they're coming to steal our food, so they hit the drum. So I mean, it has many functions, but
Mhm.
the sound of being alive is beautiful. Okay, so Copeland says the four elements or ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. First of all, how would you explain non-academically what is tone color?
Okay, so that's the tone color. Okay. That's the tone color.
Yeah,
For me, tone color, of course, it's not the academic definition. For me, tone color is the quality of hearing that a particular sound evokes in your in your brain. This
Yeah.
this is different than
Yeah.
that. So that I would call that tone color. It could be extended to be to the orchestral world too, but mine is more general.
Yeah. Because I timbre is what people say. Okay, well, people don't always know what timbre is. That was beautiful how you said that. Just taking those four, melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color, how do you integrate or focus those? Is there a process? Is there any strategies, or is it just a free for all?
Well, this is my particular viewpoint, and I thought about this a lot. And the basic ingredients of musical sound. I've thought about this, and for me, the basic thing is time. Now, time is is before rhythm. Time is the field in which the particles of rhythm dance. Okay, time is there. Time is unmarked. Time is so unmarked, it doesn't exist until we mark it with stopping and starting points. And those stopping and starting points are rhythm.
Yeah.
My speech would be non-understandable to you if I didn't have any thoughts. You would not understand the words I'm saying unless I found a way to mark them with rhythmic events. Yeah. Silences, and non-silences. That's the basic stuff, right? If a non-silence is a pure tone, and next non-silence is another pure tone, you begin to dwell in the idea of melody, right? So if I go, no, 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 I begin to dwell in the idea of melody as I allow silence to create notes. If I go, no, without silence, I'm doing something else. I'm making a kind of different kind of. But if I have to start and stop it, if I go, silence, no, silence, I made a shape for you, okay? And you say, that's a shape. Then you say, shape means something. Shape is an element I would use in those four elements. What are the four as you said them again? Melody, rhythm.
Melody, harmony, rhythm, tone color.
Yeah, I find harmony to be the fake, to be the fake brother in this situation, and I find harmony to be the interloper here. Harmony is harmony comes out of everything else. Harmony is way beyond a basic element. Harmony comes when two instruments or two people or a composer decides to put more than one element together, three elements together, timing, rhythm, and tone together. That's it's a really big deal. Harmony is a really complex thing. So I put that way down the line in terms of the basic elements,
David, no one's ever broken it down like that. It helped me a lot. I appreciate that. My friend says the 3 T's of music are taste, technique, and theory. Technique, you learned how to play the drums. Theory, you knew the structure. How does one acquire taste?
Well, very simply, one tastes. I mean, we all have a tongue, and the tongue has taste buds on it. Everyone has different amounts of the sweet and the sour and the salty and the umami, different amounts of it, different distribution, different strengths. So the things taste different to different people to a certain extent, but there's some similarities, lots of similarities. And the only way you develop taste is by tasting all these things. If you go through your whole life and don't have any sugar, and on your deathbed someone gives you a chocolate bar, you're going to have an amazing experience. Let me tell you, you're not going to know where to put that in your hierarchy of life. You have no way to what does that taste? Where does that fit? I never had it before. So one develops taste by experience. One develops musical taste, sound taste by being in the world, hearing different stuff. My first thing was from the radio. where the environment you live in. I didn't get my first, when I was a kid, I didn't get it from hearing John Cagean sounds on the street, because we didn't think the street was, you don't listen to the street. Oh, I listen to my bicycle. We put things on our spokes of our bicycle to make, we did that, right? Like Zappa did with his piece on television, right? Didn't he do that with a bicycle?
Steve Allen, yes. He
Yeah.
played a bicycle. Yes, very good.
So we had somewhere, there's an idea that things around you can make sound, but it wasn't music. It was fun. And so you develop this thing. You listen to the radio. You hear things you like. What does that mean? What was that? I remember I turned on the radio when I was about in my room when I was about 13, 12. I just started playing the drums, taking the first few drum lessons. And I turned on the radio at midnight, and there was a classical experimental program. I didn't know what it was. And I heard a piece being played with lots of drums like crazy, all kinds of drumming. I said, wow, what is that? It's like, I never heard anything like that. Like what a drummer can do that? Like, could a drummer really do that? Because I didn't know anything about ensembles or anything. And the announcer just said that was Ionización by Edgar Varese. And I thought, wow, one drummer can play that. I thought no one said that it was a group of percussionists, but because he said one, because I didn't know that, and because I made the mistake of thinking it was one drummer, I learned something. I tried to play stuff that one drummer couldn't play because of that. So one gets these things by luck or by chance, and your family introduces you, your friends introduce you. The first time I heard Coltrane, excuse me, do a Love Supreme I bought the record in just after it came out, so just late '64. And I was a regular straight ahead jazz player when I first heard him do a Love Supreme, a Love Supreme. I said, what is this? What is this? He can't sing. That's not about singing. That's not, I couldn't accept it, but it engraved itself in my mind as a moment, and it expanded my taste. My taste buds, my earbuds got wider and bigger, and that was the goal. That was the goal, to find people and to meet people and to play with people who would do that to me. The first time I played with Christian Marclay, the turntable player, when he was doing live 4 turntables with records, the first time I played with him, and so in the early 80s, duo improvising, he had 4 turntables. He had 200 records. He had the whole history of Western and Eastern music at his fingertips. And I had a drum set and a voice. And I was, at every moment, he could overwhelm me with Stravinsky, music from South Africa, Russian choral music, the sound of the whales, radio stations from around the world. And it was like, oh my God, what can I do with this? How can I possibly compete with this? Well, David, you can't. You can't compete. You can only find the places where you need to be. That was a big thing for me, to find the places I needed to be to make this work complete, more complete than it was.
Wow. Well, he's one of my heroes, and you are too, because you revoked this. My friend talked to Frank from the grave, whether you believe it or not, and he asked him this question. So what does Varese think of your music, Frank? So you imagine you're walking down the hallway in heaven. Oh, Edgar, you're Frank. You're Edgar. You're Edgar Varese's room. You knock on the door. You go, Edgar. And 3 reactions could possibly come. 1, Edgar goes, get the fuck out of here. You ripped me off, dude. 2, he could go, Frank, you did okay. Or he could go, Frank, come in. I love you. So it's like I think, prove this thing that you proved that Frank forgot to die and Edgar forgot to die, because they both are alive in how you described hearing Varese. How many people did that? They will, that's just one drummer. I can do that. That's what art should do. I think art should do 2 things: fuck your shit up and make you go, I can do that.
Yeah, I think those are all. That's good.
Yeah, but here's the Frank Zappa on the Steve Allen playing the bicycle. At one point, Frank is doing a piece playing the bicycle, having an electronic pre-recorded tape play, and Steve Allen's band is playing. So Frank is instructing the band, and
They're
he
going
says,
crazy, right?
he goes, please refrain from making musical tones. And these are pro studio cats. And Steve Allen goes, well, they should have no trouble doing that. So,
Did you see, before we go change the subject a little bit, did you see there's an old video of John Cage on the Gary Moore show? You seen this
oh yeah,
one?
oh
Well,
I
he does
put
this
that.
piece of his with the radios.
I put that in my movie.
I
I
mean,
love that piece. That's
I mean,
amazing.
here's what got me. First of all, Cage was a showman.
Totally.
He was not only an avant-gardist, he wanted to make a lively show. He had a persona. He performed that piece like Buster Keaton. He was a slapstick, quiet guy running around this space. And when something fell off the table, he just went on, gave it a look, and went on like, here we go. Well, on to the next new thing. I mean, it was so at the moment made, and so non-caring about what it should or could be, just dealing with it. It was gorgeous.
Oh, it's amazing. And that's bringing up Keaton. Is my line is Keaton turned a stumble into a dance. He knew how to do that so well. It's so well put. So here's the follow-up with the taste word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
McLuhan said, and there's two thoughts here, but you can connect them how you may or respond. Mm-hmm. Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference.
I agree with part of it, and I don't agree with part of it. I think that song is slowed down speech because it begs the body to enter. Speech holds the body off to a certain extent, asks for a certain kind of attention, but song tells the body to come in. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. And then I could say, looking at it that way, I could say that, yes, okay, the cultural statement that comes next also makes sense in that what different cultures move and dance and proceed physically across space in different ways, which is reflected in their music and in their timing. So it kind of all fits together that way.
Yeah, because it's sort of like when the tuba throat singers sing and it's transcendental to me as a listener, then I learn, oh, they're singing about their horses, their boots, and the snow. And in Brazilian music, when it's, came into America, it was so romantic, and we didn't really need specifically to know the words. It somehow translated romance to us, didn't it? I mean, so that's how they speak, or the Italians speak that way. Like Frank talked about how your gas station attendant speaks is musical. Mm-hmm. How he says, do you need this? So
yeah, I think all these things are actually waiting around. The idea of speech as music, everything is accessible to people. This is an accessible tool.
Yeah,
and I would take right now the chance to go into the problems of the world, politics and politicians, in that the shamanic politicians, the charismatic politicians, knows speech is music.
Yeah,
they know that silence and body captures you. They know that. They understand it. They know about repetition, about how to get you in, bring you in, bring you in. You want to come in? I'll bring you in. They know it's powerful and it's dangerous. It's a tool, and they use it. And we can use it in our daily lives as a playful thing, and aware of how powerful it is also at the same time.
Yeah. it's heavy what you're talking about. I'd love to go this into part two. I want to go into silence. I want to go in the difference between art and science. But
Mhm.
let's close out this part, David, and thank you again so much. What's more fundamental, music or language?
I would say music is more fundamental, only because I look at the progression of cellular life to multicellular life to bodies to beings with a lung and a vocal cord that makes sound, and that sound coming out modulated by the world and reflected back by the world around them, and that sound being what one could say, I exist, I I function, I live here, and it's interesting, isn't it? If I'm in a cave, I hear an echo. If I'm next to a tree, I don't hear an echo. I think it's music first and language second.
Yeah, it's really good. The word interesting so good. I love it because David, I asked this guy, he's 20 years old and he's making millions in the music business. And I said, "So, what do you think of the music business?" And he says, "Interesting." And I goes, "That's a wimpy ass word." Frank Zappa says, "In order to be in the music business, you have to sell your cock and your balls." And the
Yeah.
kid goes, "I thought I only had to sell my soul." And it was
Well,
sort of
the rest goes along with it, kid. Let me tell you.
it's really been a delight, David. I appreciate you sharing all your knowledge with me and wisdom and sounds,
It wouldn't happen without you, Gerry. If you didn't put these wild thoughts together, I wouldn't be responding to them.
Well, I sure hope we can plan a part two somewhere down the line. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever
Thanks,
and ever.
Gerry. Thanks a million, man. Yeah, me too.
Thank,
Ciao.
thank you so much.
Thanks,
Love
Gerry.
you.